Hi everyone, it's 214 React here, and today we're going to be looking at the nostalgia of Counter-Strike from my perspective over the years. Now, a lot of people have nostalgia for Counter-Strike, of course, from playing it online for many, many years. But for me, it's primarily been around playing it offline with bots because I'm so terrible, I don't really play online. So I'm just going to be going over from how I've played the games and how I've come into contact with the games and why I find them so nostalgic. So we're going to be playing through the original Counter-Strike 1.6 or whatever the latest version of that original game is on Steam, a bit of Condition Zero, Counter-Strike Source, and Counter-Strike 2. And on each game, we're going to be looking through the map Dust 2. So we're going to start off on the original Counter-Strike on Steam, whatever version is on there. I think it's 1.6. And there's also no bots on this version of the game, so we won't be seeing any action. It will just be us running around the map. So let's dive in. Of course, this uses the Gold Source engine, so it looks super old school, but has a great aesthetic to it. I just remember seeing screenshots of this game back in the late 90s in PC gaming magazines and just thinking, this looks so incredible. Wondering how my Pentium 2 with some integrated graphics and 64 megabytes of RAM would ever be able to play this. I think it would have played it, but it would have lagged up quite a bit because of the integrated graphics. I also saw screenshots of Half-Life as well, and I was very intrigued by that game in the late 90s and early 2000s. But I didn't play Half-Life until 2004 when I picked up a boxed copy of it. And then when I activated that copy on Steam, it gave me all the other Gold Source games for free alongside it, including Counter-Strike. So that was when I first played Counter-Strike. And I think I played a little bit of it online on like a 56k modem on my Duron 1300 with integrated graphics. And I was terrible, really, really bad at it. Didn't know what I was doing. Just has this quintessential late 90s look that is just amazing. The low res textures, this kind of early sort of lighting, the baked in shadows here. Nice light mapping, I suppose, yeah, because the Gold Source is built off the Quake engine. And the low res skyboxes, which at the time you didn't notice were low res and looked terrible. At the time, this all looked amazing. Basically, looked like photoreal. But over the years, of course, time has not been kind to it. And even when I played it in 2004, it still looked pretty good, and I still enjoyed just running around the maps. And areas like this, just great for screenshots. The other thing with these games is, of course, the sound design. Now, the original, because it was on Gold Source, has that super crunchy sound, and even the original weapon selection sounds from the original Half-Life there. So the voices are all really crunchy, compressed files. Same with the weapons, and the explosion effects there are also just so old school. All adds to that nostalgia. You can even see the bullets pinging off of the skybox there. So good. Great stuff. Now, the other interesting thing is that when I saw screenshots of this back in the day, all the weapons were left-handed. You can set that through a setting, as we just saw there. Now, this option was added in to more recent versions on Steam, I believe, because it harkened back to the original release of Counter-Strike. And I believe one of the people that worked on this game was left-handed. That's why all the weapons were left-handed at the time. It's also why the weapons all fire incorrectly. They're all left hook, so all the brass ejects out to the left rather than the right, because they simply mirrored the weapons over to the right. I'm not sure what version of Counter-Strike they did that on, but that's why all the weapons have this funny look to them. Seeing screenshots of the game with the guns on the left-hand side and then playing the game with the guns on the right-hand side, but the wrong way round, adds to the nostalgia of this game because I think it just gives it a really unique look. And sometimes I just like to switch the guns to the left-hand side because it just gives an entirely different feel to how you're playing an FPS game, because I'm so used to games where the weapon is on the right. And you can see here when we reload the M4, the character yanks on the forward assist rather than the charging handle. Reload the gun, which is just great. I mean, it's not correct at all, but again, it adds to that feel of Counter-Strike and that nostalgia of Counter-Strike. And we'll see in later games that they actually do fix this. I believe it was Global Offensive onwards they fixed the animation for this, as well as fixed the weapons to not be left hook anymore. Now, in some ways that's better, but in some ways it took away from a little bit of that Counter-Strike feel. This here just completely reminds me of a screenshot that I would see in a magazine in the late 90s and just go, man, I want to play that game. That looks so fascinating. And I just had absolutely no idea about Half-Life or Counter-Strike at the time. It's so good, so classic. The gold source look just has a very special, nostalgic feel to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people. And of course, this leads us on to Counter-Strike Condition Zero, which I believe was released just shortly before Counter-Strike Source and had a bit more of a focus on single player. So you go to here and you can see there is a set of levels you can play through in linear order. So you've got Tour of Duty 1 here, we can go through different maps, Tour of Duty 2, 3, 4, and you unlock more money and different teammates that have different abilities and weapons, and you can assemble your team. Then you have challenges in these maps as well that you need to pass the whole Tour of Duty, which adds a little bit of a more interesting element if you're single player primarily on Counter-Strike. Rather than just playing against bots over and over again, you actually have a little bit more depth in the challenges that you need to do. But I don't think this was too popular overall because of the focus on single player. It does have updated models and graphics though, which we'll see in a second, and it also has an updated version of Dust 2 called Dust 2 CZ, so that's the one we're going to be checking out. It also has bots, so we will be seeing a little bit more action in this round, so let's dive in. Alright, so here we are in Condition Zero, which added in multi-texture support, which is kind of bizarrely flicking on and off here as I move the mouse, but literally gives a good example of what the multi-texturing is doing. You've got the original texture, and then you've got an additional texture over the top, giving a bit more definition. And you also have higher definition models here on the weapons, so it just looks a little bit cleaner. Still has that gold source feel, but just a little bit more modernized. I always enjoyed looking at screenshots of it because, again, it looked intriguing and the graphics looked quite nice at the time. Not too bad, even for, I think, 2003, 2004 when it came out. I didn't actually play it until very, very recently. I started playing it properly a few months ago and actually worked my way through all of the single player missions. And I actually had a good time with it. Again, because I primarily play offline with bots and I don't really play against other people because I'm really bad at the game, it's good to have a full designed experience meant for people who want to play against bots. So again, for me, this is just another gold source classic. Entering into the 2000s sort of look, again with the multi-texturing and stuff like that, it kind of has a bit more of a Serious Sam tech look to it, but still with that lovely late 90s feel as well. And I still think it looks pretty good now. It still looks pretty smooth. I've got maximum anti-aliasing on here, anisotropic filtering, and also the HD models of the weapons and the enemies also looks really great. It's kind of the direct precursor to Counter-Strike Source. So while this doesn't have the nostalgia from the late 90s and 2000s so much, it does have quite a bit of nostalgia for me for earlier this year, as well as, again, looking at screenshots of it back in the day. Now, Condition Zero also has weapon alignment adjustments, so you can go left-handed. So we get that classic look. And I believe the character is actually pulling on the charging handle there. So this, I believe, was the first game to fix the charging handle animation, I believe, if we look closely. So again, this is just another nostalgic sort of screenshot that you'd see in the early 2000s. The old gold source, but iteratively updated look. Now, because this was very much an iterative improvement on original Counter-Strike, the sound effects are pretty much the same. The main thing being that the introduction of bots means you get a lot more chatter when playing games in single player, and again, it has that same late 90s compressed, crunchy feel to it. It took me way too long to see that guy there. So this maintains that original gold source feel. And I think they may have improved the explosion effects as well. Whoa! Oh no, the explosion effect's pretty much the same. Ooh. Oh, some of that gold source echo there as well. Of course, all the weapons have been completely redone. So we're mainly going to be looking at the M4 throughout these games, but you can see here the FAMAS just looks a lot better. The polygons on the character's hands are a lot better, a lot more detailed. And again, it's that precursor to Counter-Strike Source. Now this is the big one for me. This just has so much nostalgia, primarily because seeing all the screenshots, all the media coverage, all the new tech of Source, seeing my friend play it, and how inaccessible it was to me because of my ancient PC that was severely underpowered. It could play them, but just at very, very low frame rates with very low settings. And this one, of course, has bots in it as well, so you can play offline, which is great. I'm going to dive into some Dust 2 here. Now, in Condition 0, we saw an iterative upgrade to the graphics, but of course, this one we see an absolutely gigantic increase in the fidelity. So here we are on Dust 2. And my god, it looks a little bit different than it would have done from release because we have HDR on, which was introduced in 2006, I believe, alongside Lost Coast. Just noticed it still has footsteps on, even though I selected footsteps off in the server. So we are going to have to hear the annoying footsteps as we wander around the map, it seems. Whoa! So, ooh. And of course, this little mini-map in the corner here, I don't believe was part of the original game either. It has been updated quite extensively since the original version came out. But I just love how this looks, primarily, again, due to nostalgia, and the fact that it was so unobtainable for me at the time. I could play it, but like I said, it was about 15 to 20 FPS on my ancient PC, because my CPU just wasn't good enough to play Source games. I had to play it on DirectX 7, I think, just to get any form of reasonable performance out of it, so I couldn't get all these cool effects. But again, I could see the cool effects on my friend's PC, and they had like a 7800 or something on their Alienware, and it just played it so flawlessly. So to be able to play it now, even on my least powerful laptop, with full settings, and have it just run so smoothly and look so amazing, it just brings me back to those days where I just wished I could play this at full settings. And that's why it has such huge amounts of nostalgia for me. So the look of the guns here, the look of the maps, the textures, and of course the HDR, which was just so cool at the time in the mid-2000s as a brand new graphical technique that of course they overused hugely. Now, one of the interesting things is that this floor used to be a lot more shiny in the original game, but they've downgraded the shininess of it for some reason. At least I'm fairly certain that they have. So that's a little bit of nostalgia missing there, because I remember seeing that on my friend's PC and just going, oh my god, these specular reflections look amazing. And here at this angle, I've noticed it is actually specular on these tiles here. I think the effect has just been toned down quite a bit. But look at that. That is a nostalgic effect right there. In fact, this is with HDR off, and the specular seems more prominent. So I'm wondering if it's something to do with the HDR pipeline. Although I'm fairly certain when the HDR pipeline originally came out, the specular was even more prominent. Maybe they've just done something recently where when you turn on HDR, the specular on these tiles is not as prominent for some reason. Some sort of lighting value issue. There we go. We've managed to capture another nostalgic feeling of this game. Eventually I did get a better PC, and then I could play this at full settings. When I did, again, my god, the nostalgia of playing this, even just against bots, and just how it looked, so good. Now, Counter-Strike Source continues the tradition of the incorrect reloading by yanking on the forward assist, and it also continues the tradition of the left hook guns, and I believe it was the last game in the series to have these before they were corrected in CSGO. Now there's no option in the menu to flick to left-handed guns. There is an option here to go CL right hand 0, and it will actually flick the gun to the left-hand side. You get a little bit more of that old school Counter-Strike nostalgia. Some of the sound was updated for this game and cleaned up a little bit. The footsteps sound a little bit different, and the voices sound a little bit cleaned up. I think they're just using less compressed sounds, and I think the sound of the guns is a little bit cleaner. Again, less compressed, but still maintains that, especially the footstep sounds here, they still maintain that very much Gold Source feel. You've got the Half-Life 2 kind of feeling with some of the bullet holes and some of the sound effects and visual effects, but also the Gold Source sound effects as well, but just cleaned up a little bit. Like, I believe when you're walking over the sand here, that's a Half-Life 2 sound effect. And then when you're walking on more solid surfaces, it's a Half-Life 1 sound effect, I believe. The Half-Life 2 did the same. It reused some of the sound effects from Half-Life 1. The thing is, even without fast weapon switch, it doesn't have the original Half-Life sounds to it anymore. It has the Half-Life 2 weapon selector, but not the original sounds when you're flicking between weapons. And there's even a little bit of weird nostalgia for me here with this AK-47, where the wood sampling with the textures looks a bit off. I think it's a bit oversampled. You can kind of see some shimmering on it there, which you can try and clean up with FXAA, and it definitely gets cleaned up at high resolutions. But 1080p here, you can still see that kind of shimmer where the wood texture is a little bit too high res for the resolution, I believe. Especially when I was running at a low resolution about 20 years ago. But even that has a slight bit of nostalgia for me. And I remember playing this as well in early 2006 with my friend, and of course they had their new PC. I hadn't upgraded mine yet, and we were one-on-oneing online, and he was just absolutely taking me out every single time because he was just, whoa, very much a better player than me, and also had, just a better frame rate and everything. So I never really stood a chance. But I remember playing it so late into the night, all the way around to like 5 a.m. or something ridiculous, and then going into college and falling asleep in college because I was so tired. But it was so worth it, and that adds so much nostalgia to this as well. There's multiple levels of nostalgia with this one. The awesome screenshots, the tech behind it, playing it on my old PC late into the night, playing it on my new PC with all the graphics cranked up. And of course, what we can do here is turn off the HDR and get the more original look of the map, which very similar to Lost Coast when you switch HDR off on modern versions of this game. It doesn't entirely switch HDR off. I think it just switches bloom off because you can still see the light aperture adjustment. So I think HDR is still actually active, but it's just turned off the bloom. But this gives it a little bit closer of a look to what it originally looked like without HDR, which is again another great source look. Unfortunately, the game is not only still keeping HDR on, it's also very unstable when you switch HDR off. It crashes quite a lot. So I've flicked HDR back on fully here. And of course, we can look at the physics that were added into the game, because of course Half-Life 2 is all about the physics, so they added that in to Counter-Strike. And I believe this is the only version of the game that has these barrels that will move around. They got rid of that in Global Offensive, and it's not in Counter-Strike 2. There's very limited physics in Counter-Strike 2. I believe because the pro games, it was probably interfering with them and adding a little bit of uncertainty, but that adds another layer of nostalgia to this game. The physics interactions. My CPU, before I upgraded my PC later on in 2006, just couldn't really handle it, and so lagged up so much when any physics interactions happened in the game. Let's see if we can defuse this bomb. Oh, this is going to be tight. This is going to be close. Oh! Of course, because this was source, it added in bump maps. So when you look at these textures up close, you can see the bump mapping details on them. Specular. Just looks really good. And it's also combined with the nostalgia of Half-Life 2 itself. I think it also harks back to a time where you could download skins off of Game Banana, I believe. Thousands of skins and stuff you could download for free, as opposed to today's skin economy where everything costs loads of money, even for the most basic of skins, and some of the fun with that has been kind of ruined. But that's kind of a separate topic. Just to talk about Global Offensive just a little bit. Now, CS2 replaced Global Offensive, so I don't believe you can play it at all anymore. I don't really have that much nostalgia for it. When it came out, I played it a little bit, but I was never really too impressed with how it looked, because it looked very grey and bland compared to Source and the previous games, and I just didn't enjoy playing it as much. I certainly didn't enjoy just wandering around the maps on my own so much. I did play a lot more of that one online, ironically. I remember playing a lot of, I think, Gun Game back in 2017, so I kind of have a nostalgia to it, but just not as strong as these other games. Even Condition Zero, that I just started playing a couple of months ago, I have more nostalgia for and a better feeling for it. So, Global Offensive, of course, won't be included in this video because I can't play it anymore, as far as I'm aware, because it was replaced by CS2, but also because it just doesn't have that same Counter-Strike nostalgic feel to me, and when Counter-Strike 2 was released, it brought that feeling right back. So even just the look of the models and the weapons, and even the characters' hands there, and the way the sort of shading goes over the skin, everything like that, just so nostalgic. It's great, and I just love playing it and going back in time. And here we are. CS2. Now, this game obviously has a lot of modern gaming sensibilities to it, but it brings back that feeling of Counter-Strike to me, where I just enjoy running around the maps because they look so good, and it just looks so clean as well with Source 2. Along with Counter-Strike Global Offensive, this is one of the games that I played pretty much when it came out, and I didn't really have to look at screenshots or anything of it and feel like, oh god, I really want to play that. There was no barrier to playing it. Same with Global Offensive, because I had the hardware at the time to play both of them. And I've done a couple of videos on this as well, so go check those out in the description. And let's check out some Dust 2. Now, the reason why I have a lot of nostalgia for this game is, of course, because I was playing it in 2023, which feels like 1,000 years ago for various reasons, but also because of the Source 2 graphics, which very much reminds me of the graphics of Half-Life Alyx, because of course Half-Life Alyx was on Source 2. I played through Alyx way back in 2020, which feels even longer ago than 2023. So I have a lot of nostalgia for Alyx, just because that was an incredible game. Oh boy, oh boy. Just love how clean the game looks. It has a beautiful feel to it. It also feels kind of theme parky in how the levels look, but also realistic at the same time, so it doesn't look too cartoony, but it also doesn't look too gritty, so it avoids that global offensive look. It has some really cool tech with the smoke grenades and stuff like that. All that stuff really captured me. This was the first Counter-Strike where I was making videos when it came out, so I think back to looking at the new tech, looking at all the other videos like 2 Clicks Philip talking about the smoke grenades, Digital Foundry talking about smoke grenades, and the new graphics of Source 2. And for the past nearly 2 years, I've been playing it on and off just to relax with. Because, again, it's fun to just play casually against bots, and it's fun to just run around the levels, and just play around the smoke grenades as well. And look at that cool fire effect. It's so good. I go into more details of this in my other videos, so you can check those out there. And on top of that, it has the feeling of all the other Counter-Strike games with this new technology as well. Whoa! Let's get distracted by the football there. There's a bit of the physics, but the football doesn't get in the way or anything like that. You can just sort of boot it around. So this game has multiple layers of... Oh boy, oh boy. Oh my god, this is going to be close. Ooh. So yeah, this game has multiple levels of nostalgia for me, because it's obviously all the other Counter-Strikes wrapped up into one with a brand new engine, looking really, really clean. And the other thing about Counter-Strike is that they all represent a certain time. So the original Counter-Strike, the 90s, Condition Zero, the early 2000s, Source, the mid 2000s, CSGO, the early 2010s, and now Counter-Strike 2, the early 2020s. And they always feel like something that people are always playing and are really popular. So it always feels nice to be a part of these games. I was never really part of the original Counter-Strike, and Source always had that sort of barrier. But when I could finally play it, it felt really good to be part of the kind of popular thing that's going on at the time. And same with CSGO, even though I wasn't that into it, it still felt good to be part of it, even if I was predominantly playing offline, and especially Counter-Strike 2. And as time goes on, the nostalgia gets sweeter. Think back to 2023 when I was playing this, 2024 when I was playing this, and even a couple of months ago when I was playing it. And in a couple of years, I'll have nostalgia for making this very video. So of course we have to talk about the left hook weapons in this game. So of course we've gone from left-handed weapons to right-handed weapons that are left hook, to pulling on the forward assist rather than the charging handle, to right-handed weapons in the right hand with an option to switch to the left hand and correct reloading techniques, but the option to switch to left hand in the menus, all the way up to the latest game, CS2 here, where you can just press the H key and it will switch the weapon over to the left hand. and also switch the weapon over to a left hook M4. So you can see there the bolt catch and release and the fire selector all switch sides there. So we've come full circle and completely resolved pretty much everything. You've got right hook weapons on the right hand side, left hook weapons on the left hand side, correct reloading there using the charging handle. The only inconsistency, of course, is that every single time you switch to the weapon, you yank the charging handle. But that's just a cool little animation, and it's probably a gameplay designed to delay you switching over to your weapon just for a little bit. But it's just great how that's come full circle. Again, enables you to get a little bit more of that nostalgic feel by flicking over to the left-hand side. So it's a nice preference for people playing the game, but also just a nice bit of nostalgia for me from, again, looking back at screenshots of the original Counter-Strike in the late 90s, and also getting that feeling of playing a FPS with a weapon on the left-hand side. And of course, this time the brass now ejects out to the left, as you'd expect with a left-handed weapon. That kind of DNA of the original Counter-Strike is still there, but just modernized and updated. Now, of course, because from CS Global Offensive onwards, they pretty much rebuilt the game from the ground up. A lot of the sound effects changed. They stayed very similar from CS all the way up to CSS. Again, as we noted, just more cleaned up, whereas there's completely re-recorded voice lines and totally new sounds to the weapons. A lot of that Half-Life 2 DNA is kind of gone. The original CSS sounds have been re-recorded and redone, but they've kept the overall sound design in line with it. So the weapons all sound like they should, just updated. Whoa! And not just smoothed out and reduced compression, but probably recorded with much better equipment. So it kind of loses that Half-Life 2 and original Gold Source feel of the sounds, but maintains the DNA of them. It's a slight loss of nostalgia back to the previous games, but overall a really good change to the game. It gives me nostalgia back to when I first played this game and a bit of CSGO, and when I look back in a few years, I'll have nostalgia for the sound effects here when they inevitably improve them again in further iterations of CS2 or CS3 or something like that. Oh yeah, those smokes are great. Let's get a frag out. See. Yeah, the sound effect on that. So much less crunchy than previous versions to a hilarious degree. Even the explosion looks a little bit less aggressive, but obviously overall better. So there we go. That was just a quick rambly video randomly talking about my nostalgic experiences with Counter-Strike. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know in the comments what your experience is with Counter-Strike, what nostalgia you have for the games, and what you think of some of the more stranger games, such as Condition Zero, or if you know of any other weird versions of Counter-Strike that are out there. And if there's a way to play Counter-Strike Global Offensive still, let me know that as well, because that would be really cool to try out. Subscribe, hit the little bell, really helps. Always new videos every week on tech and video games. Hope everyone's staying safe, and I will see you in the next video.